Welcome back to the news today. This is the daily debate on Israel elections 2015. And the campaigns continue to play out in social media, this time on a whole new level. In a lengthy Facebook post, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused Arnon Moses, the publisher of the Yediot Ahronot newspaper, and its website of, quote, being the key factor behind the wave of smears against my wife and myself. For many years, the Israeli media was perceived as leaning to the left, but these days the paper with the largest distribution in Israel is Israel Hayom. That's in the ownership of Sheldon Adelson, a known benefactor of the prime minister. So in a democratic country, is there any basis to Netanyahu's claim that he's being hunted by the media, or is it just plain free speech? Joining me tonight to try to answer this and a lot more is Dov Lipman, Israeli member of parliament of the Yesh Atid party, and Professor Abraham Sion, chair of the Center for Law and Mass Media at Ariel University. Good evening.
Good evening.
So before we get to what I just mentioned, to the media side, which has been a very big part of these campaigns, I want to go back to the Congress speech that seems the story that keeps on giving, because this evening we have Benjamin Netanyahu speaking at a Likud event saying he will absolutely go, he's not going to back down after sort of rumors otherwise. And Obama, in a separate press conference at the White House on a different subject, sort of saying, it didn't really have to happen now. What's the rush? Is Netanyahu on the right track with this, insisting on this Congress speech?
Well, first of all, it depends whether you trust his judgment or you don't, because we know very little of the facts. We don't know how far how far Iran is close to the atom bomb. And we don't know what the relations are between, how strong the relations are between Netanyahu and the U.S. Congress. This is one thing that should be taken into consideration, because we really know very little. People who have knowledge know very little about it. But on the other hand, I would say that if it comes to the crunch and some of the members of the Senate will not be there. So we say a large number of the Senate.
Looks like several Democrats are planning not to.
Well, if it's only 8 Democrats, as they published yesterday, well, it's not that bad. But if most of the Democrats will not be there, and there will be sort of a crash between Prime Minister, more than it is now, because it's already
it's gotten pretty bad.
It's quite bad, yes. If it goes to the worst, and the outcome of the whole thing is not going to give Israel a better situation, then I would say don't go now.
Right. So I just want to, before I let you respond,
Sure.
So a recent poll shows almost half of the Israeli public doesn't support the speech, yet it's being sort of pegged as a speech made to the Israeli public, not to Congress. So what's the end game?
Israelis who are able to look at it objectively realize that all of a sudden the state of Israel has been put into the middle of a spat between the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States, a place where Israel does not only want to be, need to be, it's destructive to Israel. That's number one. Number two, when did it all of a sudden become clear that a speech before a joint session of Congress, that's what's going to save the day with Iran? I can tell you, having been in congressional hearings and plenums and the like...
Speeches don't make problems go away.
Just the opposite. Sitting with each member of Congress, going room to room, explaining to them all the facts, that's what will accomplish the goal. And therefore, the Prime Minister needs to find a way to back down. It's a mistake on both levels. It's not going to help in terms of Iran, and it's just damaging Israel's situation in America when supporters of the Prime Minister in America say this is not what we need right now, it's time for him to step down. And for me, it's sad that when we're in the middle of a debate about critical elections for Israel's future, we're bogged down in this, and perhaps maybe that's what the Prime Minister wants. It's another distraction from all the election issues.
So I want to take this point that is a very important one, because we've been speaking so much in the last week, 2 weeks, about is it a good idea, is it not a good idea for the Israeli public, for the U.S.-Israel relationship. But if we take Netanyahu at face value, he says that the importance here is to continue warning about Iran.
That's right.
Is he not sort of shooting himself in the foot in terms of credibility by pursuing this route instead of a more behind-the-scenes one?
No, because the danger of Iran is real. It's a real danger.
But is this the way to convey that?
Yes, because if you want to have publicity, if you want to have pressure, if you want to bring down this to the knowledge of the American public, this is the way to do it. I mean, you can sit in rooms and speak to one congressman, to another congressman, but this is not going to achieve. Can you imagine the prime minister going there for a month, speaking to to 600 members of the Congress? This is not the way to do it. I mean, he is trying to put as much pressure as possible, and he managed to do that because it was only Netanyahu during the last 5 years, who put pressure on Iran.
And where has that taken us? Where are we?
This is the question. We don't know exactly.
All the negotiations between the United States and the European community and Iran is because the pressure of Benjamin Netanyahu.
But that's not something which has brought us to a deal which we're satisfied with. And again, the American press is not going to be analyzing the Prime Minister's speech and the points that he raises. They'll be analyzing the empty seat behind him where the Vice President should have been sitting. Right. And they'll be counting, even if it's only 8 Democrats, they'll be talking about that issue and the Democratic and Republican battle instead of the facts. The point is we reached a point where the Iranian issue is no longer the story, and that's a mistake. And therefore, we need to find a way for him to back out of that speech and find another way to get this done.
May I disagree?
Yes, of course.
I mean, the Iranian is the issue.
But in the American press, what are they talking about? And what will they talk about?
It is the issue in the American press, too. It is the issue. Of course, it's very piquantic to speak about whether he's going to have a seat behind him or not. I don't think it's going to make that difference, and I think that this is also part of the publicity. But I don't think this is going to be the topic. The topic is going to be that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government of today is putting maximum pressure on the European community and also on the American administration to not to sign any agreement with Iran. But it seems to be that it's very close.
At this point, of course, none of us here and really nobody except the people in the room know exactly what's going on in the Iran negotiations. It's very foggy, it's very unclear. But you do see an Obama and his administration, at least on the outside, seemingly more willing, asking Congress, Obama has done several times, to wait on further sanctions, pursuing the diplomatic route, showing optimism and diplomacy with Iran. So is it working? There's no question that it's a critical issue. But is Netanyahu sort of becoming the boy who cried wolf?
Well, it seems that the American administration and the European countries are going towards a very bad agreement with Iran, in a way that Iran is going to continue to have this, to pursue the atom bomb.
And just this evening, Obama, in a press conference with Angela Merkel, said that there's no need for an extension. So it signals a sort of success on the diplomatic route.
I don't think so, because the idea is either to reach an agreement or not to reach an agreement. I heard the Iranian foreign minister who said, well, if there's not going to be an agreement, there's not going to be an agreement, and he's going to continue with what he's doing. But as you said, it's foggy, and I said as well, we don't know exactly what's happening, but it seems from everything we hear and see that the Europeans and the Americans are very close to an agreement with a deal with Iran that is going to put us in jeopardy and is going to be a very dangerous situation for Israel.
Now, what's interesting is in Israel, there's no dispute about this issue either. Meaning, there's wall to wall within the Knesset that we're against a bad deal, we're against a deal where they don't have to dismantle the centrifuges. We all agree about that issue, and it's not a question of Prime Minister Netanyahu or someone else within Israel saving us. The question is definitely a question of tactics, and the question is, what else could we have done? Is it possibly related to the breakdown in the overall relationship that we're no longer being effective in trying to prevent the bad deal from happening?
Who will determine, though, I mean, we're talking about how there is very little clarity of what exactly is going to go into a potential agreement. Who will know? Does the Israeli government know where's the line of what's a bad deal and what's not?
I don't have a doubt that the proper communications are there and the discussions are going on. There's no doubt that nothing's going to be done behind our backs
on
this issue.
Do you think, after the recent sort of...
Well, like I said, I think that the breakdown in the relationship is such that we're not in the place that we want to be at this crucial point. And sometimes it happens that people who wave the flag of security and speak with a lot of bravado, actually there's a tremendous amount of damage that can happen to security along the way. A effective relationships, personalities. These are all things which do play a role over here. And again, like I said, in Israel, there's wall-to-wall agreement regarding what that final deal should be, if there's any deal at all. And I believe that the Prime Minister has also succeeded on a certain level during a election season of a distraction over here. He's not being asked the questions about what's his plan to bring down the cost of housing, what's his plan to deal with poverty, what's his plan with the Haredi issue, and we're dealing with this issue and all these other gimmicky issues instead of the real issues
Professor
on the table.
Sian, I see you
I think
highly disagree.
I disagree. I think a lot is being done behind our backs, and I think Israel doesn't know the whole story. And the Americans are stalling because they want to gain time to reach this agreement. So the whole move of the Israeli government at the moment is that because we don't know so much, and we are fearing that the situation is that they are close to an agreement.
But why don't we know so much? Why don't we know much? Why isn't the relationship such that the information is being shared and working together? Why have we reached that point?
Why do you think?
I think that there's been a breakdown over the last few years in the relationship.
Well, of course, there's been a breakdown because Obama is moving towards a way which is anti-Israel. He's the first president that has been going against Israel.
Has contributed to sort of giving him a light push in that direction against Israel?
Maybe. It could be that Netanyahu, as a way to oppose the situation, maybe he gave him a push. But the situation is that it's not Netanyahu, but it's Obama who has been going, actually putting us in dreams. When he came here to Jerusalem and said, "You are not alone, and there will not be an atom bomb." Today we know perfectly well that there is going to be an atom bomb.
Well, exactly this line, there will not be an atom bomb. Obama has said several times, he's used this famous red line, these two key words that every leader loves, that Iran will not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. So is it not a bit of the Israeli government's responsibility to believe him, to take him for his word?
Well, we did that 2 years ago, and we found out that it's wrong. We found out that he is appeasing the Iranians, and he's trying to go their way. And it looks like the Iranians are playing very foul play with the Europeans and the Americans, and they're believing them. So at some point, there is a bigger responsibility on the Israeli government.
So I
want to say that
yes.
Just a few months ago, in this government, you had those parties, those political parties, who now are opposing his move. But they were part of the government only 2-3 months ago.
I want to take it for a moment back inside Israel to the media campaigns I spoke about when we began this segment. Netanyahu blaming the paper Yediot Ahronot for sort of smear campaigns against him. There's a lot of media involvement here. Does he have a point? Is there sort of media puppeteering happening in this election campaign?
Within a few weeks, hopefully we'll get a report from the state comptroller regarding exactly what went on or didn't go on in the Prime Minister's office, and we'll have to at home, and we'll leave it at that. I do believe that this is all part of not dealing with the actual issues. The Prime Minister can come out with videos and Facebook posts talking about all these other issues, and in the process, deflecting the core issues of where have you been for 7 years on the core issues, internal issues within Israeli society, on religion and state, on poverty, on the cost of living, and there's no answers to those questions, and instead, you're rightfully asking questions about this newspaper versus that newspaper. He's being very effective in deflecting the core issues. In terms of the criticism, I believe that newspapers can take a certain perspective. There's nothing wrong with that in general. If they're making things up, if there are issues that are brought to the table that aren't true, there are ethical issues, there's a way for that to be dealt with. But as long as people are dealing within the ethical realm, and there are all kinds of institutions in Israel to deal with that, then I think that everything is fair game.
So let's talk for a moment about those core issues. We don't have enough time. Sure, go ahead.
Just a few things. Israel is in a much better position than many European countries who are not at war with other countries. In other words, Israel's position, the economic situation of Israel, is very good in comparison to the situation we are in. Don't forget that we had 2 wars. Now, those wars cost money. And don't forget that we have a better labor situation than many other countries.
But what is his plan? What's his plan? Has the Prime Minister presented the country with his
but
plan
you said
to deal with any of these
evade,
issues?
You said before that he was trying to evade the situation. This is not true.
So why isn't he presenting his plan? Someone who's going to put Likud in the ballot box. What is the plan the Prime Minister has presented to deal with the economic issues, the housing issues, the religion and state issues? And there's no answer to those questions. There's no plan that's being presented. Instead, we're talking about Yediot Achronot, we're talking about this, that, and the other, and we're not dealing with the core issues that voters need to know about when they go to the ballot box.
There are plans. And
where are they?
They are.
They're
what do you
secret?
mean? Some of the plans were done by Lapid, and other plans were done by others.
Plans.
Now, let me point out. You said that he's trying to evade the situation. He's not trying to evade the situation. The situation today, the major issue today, is not the economic situation. The economic situation is much better than other countries. The main issue is Iran and the Palestinians.
All right, on that note, unfortunately, we have to end. I want to ask you what Yesh Atid's plan is. You guys are, of course, part of this election. Next time you'll come back and tell us. Dov Lipman, Professor Abraham Sion, thanks very much for being with us. 2 minutes, and we're back.